Hi class, welcome back. So right now we're going to be looking at how we can add grids to our documents on Photoshop. We'll start by creating a new document. A web preset will do, and let's pick web most common. Uncheck artboards, create. So on this blank canvas, if we have some grids on top of it, it helps to organize our layout, and also it is a big help to make a responsive web design. This is a desktop screen format, and we're going to be adding the grid by clicking on view, and then we'll click on new guide layout. On new guide layout, you can see that you have a default mode with 8 columns, or you can choose 12 columns, 16 columns, or 24 columns. 12 column is the most used one for the Bootstrap, but I don't really like to have my columns facing the edges of the pages, because usually I think it's good practice to leave a padding, some space on the margins, unless of course if you have an image that goes full bleed, then that's another story. But if you're distributing a menu or buttons or text, it's really a good idea to keep away from the edges. So let's choose our custom option here on preset. We'll keep 12 columns, and the gutter, which is the space between the columns, we can leave with something like 30 pixels, which I find good enough. You can click on margins, and I like to set my margin, my top margin to 0 and my bottom margin to 0 as well. And my left margin I'll set to 40 pixel and the right one to 40 pixel as well. You can center columns and preview. And those light blue lines that you see on the screen, they're your guides. Click on OK. And right now you can come to view and look for the option Snap to and select Snap to Guides. Right now, when you draw elements on your screen, they will be aligned to your units of the grid. So let's start by drawing a rectangle. And this rectangle has 12 units, or it goes across the screen. And let's imagine that I would have some text that has only 3 units. So it's going to span over 3 columns. And I could have as well smaller elements that would take 1 unit, such as a circle like this. Then I can bring it in the line on the top to my rectangle, and so forth. You can have elements that are, let's imagine that you have a picture here taking 3 units, and maybe you have another element here That takes 3 units as well. You can later align it. To your other elements. And this is basically it for the grids. Let's now create a mobile document. So again, create new document, and I can look for the mobile preset, and I have all of these presets to choose from, and I will pick iPhone 6. No need to leave the artboard checked, and I'll click on create. Then as you can see, now my canvas is the size of a screen, of a mobile phone screen, more precisely an iPhone 6 screen. And we need to add a grid this here as well. So how can we do that? It's the same way. We come to View, New Guide Layout. But the layout here for a mobile, it's, if we use the 12 columns, it's too, you can see that the columns themselves, they are too small, and we don't have that much space here for the eye to be comfortable. So we need to have elements that are going to occupy a bigger space of the screen. So what we use mostly for mobile devices is a custom grid system of 4 columns. The gutter, you can keep the same 30 pixels with a top margin of 0, a bottom margin of 0 as well, and a left margin of 40 pixels and a right margin of 40 pixels. Click on preview and center columns. Okay, so there we go. We have our grid established to the document. Again, I'll come to view and make sure that the snap to guides is clicked on. And if I am to distribute elements here, such as I did on my desktop screen, I will have one element that spans through the screen, but in this case occupies only 4 units of my grid. I could bring my element that I have from my desktop to this document if my elements are smaller than 4 columns, right? Then I can bring them without stretching. So I could add here my element that spans throughout 3 units, and my smaller elements that span over 1 unit. And so forth. I could bring a square here, 2 units, bring it down a little bit, and maybe copy it to the side. And that's how you implement grids on your documents. Keep in mind, this is important for you to solve your responsive web designs, and it's going to be helpful when we are transferring our wireframes from our hand sketches to the screen. That's it for this tutorial, and follow up when we will be transferring our hand-drawn wireframes to Photoshop.